So, firstly, please present yourself.
So my name is T.Mulligan. I'm an emergency physician from the United States, but I had additional training after my emergency training in how to build emergency in other countries. So I'm a professor at the University of Maryland. I'm a board member of the International Federation for Emergency Medicine and a board member of the American Academy of Emergency Medicine. I've worked in about 45 countries in the last 20 years doing emergency medicine development. So,
what brought you here to the 42nd country?
I'm friends with Dinas and several other Lithuanian emergency physicians from 10 years ago or so. We see each other several times a year at conferences or programs or emergency medicine related activities. I was asked by Dinas about 2 years ago to help organize this conference. So I was one of the main organizers of the scientific program, all the foreign speakers and the curriculum and the lecture topics and the format of the conference, as well as the pre-conference. So I've had a lot of experience organizing conferences, and there are a lot of people in the global emergency medicine arena who are very involved in helping with first conferences or second conferences, and helping speak with the ministries and VIPs involved in helping getting emergency medicine up and running.
What were your impressions about our emergency department?
I only saw one department, the one that's about 10 minutes from here. I think we're going to another one tomorrow. I'm impressed by that. And I was shown the department by the current director of the department, and he showed me it's very modern, it's very well designed. He actually attributed some of the design features that they had implemented 3 or 4 years ago because of some training that we had been involved in together. You know, I teach administration and management and clinical emergency medicine, non-clinical emergency medicine. We teach emergency department design as part of our global training courses. And he attended some of these emergency department design courses 7 or 8 years ago, and then now we can see some of these elements in the design. So I'm very impressed at how modern the design is. It seemed to be very spacious. It seems like a place I'd be happy to work. And of course, if you need anybody, you have my phone number. But I think the true test of the emergency department is also not how it looks when you take a photograph, but how it looks when you watch a video of it. Because some places can look very modern at first glance, but when you work there and work there over days or weeks or months, maybe it doesn't function in a modern way. But I could, from the conversations that I've had from people who are working here for the last 5 years or so already, it seems to be a very good design and good department.
Maybe you got some ideas what we can improve there.
Well, I mean, just off the top of my head, there's lots of space. It seems to be, when I was there, it may have coincidentally been a little underpopulated with patients. And so I thought maybe using the larger space to have a little bit more patient involvement in that extra space. For example, there was a very large number of people in the waiting room, but there were a lot of empty beds in the emergency department. And so in the cases where, you know, every now and then we do have empty beds in the ER, and maybe we can recommend some processes where people don't have to wait in the waiting room if there are empty beds in the ER. And so sometimes we have direct bedding where we bring people in. We have bedside registration, bedside triage, so that the first thing the patient does, if there's a free bed, is come into the bed. That way the doctor can see them first, and then we can do registration and triage and other things after the doctor sees them. And so sometimes that's a way of clearing up the waiting room and so-called direct bedding and bedside registration triage.
Our first 5 emergency medicine doctors, should they stay in our university hospital and then try to make there more physicians appear, or they should spread through the hospitals in the whole Lithuania to send the message?
Well, the answer is it depends. In general, there's no perfect answer, and there are benefits and weaknesses to both of those. In general, the first class, the second class, it's helpful to keep them home, keep them the place where they trained. Because although 5 years of training is a lot, and you graduate as now a specialist, and I understand all the graduates also pass their board, so now they are board certified. Even when you become a board certified residency trained emergency specialist, you're still not done with your training. You still have extra training that goes on year after year after year, particularly if you're the first class. And so they might know how to take care of all the emergency patients, and they might be board certified emergency physicians, but they probably still need extra training in things like administration, management. Maybe they know how to perform ultrasound, but do they know how to teach ultrasound to all the emergency doctors in the country? How do you credential them? What about pediatric emergency medicine? They might know how to take care of pediatric patients, but do you know how to teach pediatric emergency medicine to all your other doctors? And so becoming a teacher and academic and teaching principles is another thing to learn. And then later, let's say, I don't know how many people are in the Lithuanian Society of Emergency Medicine right now, but inside the Society of Lithuanian Emergency Medicine, in 5 or 10 or 15 years, you're going to have people who are experts, not just in emergency, but some of them in pediatric emergency. Some need to be experts in health policy. Some of them need to be experts in health legislation, some in public health, some in geriatrics, some in ultrasound, some in military medicine, etc. So there's still a long way to go. So I would say the early days, first year, second year, third year, it's probably better to stay in one place and to get that extra training. But if there's a place over here that is ready to go, they want a new residency director, they want to start anew, then maybe you let 1 or 2 or 3 go. But I'll say after the second, third, fourth year, yeah, that's usually what happens, is people bounce out and they start a program here. And now this program runs for 3 or 4 years. Those people bounce out and they start a program here. The key thing to remember, I think, is whose job is it really going into the future to build emergency medicine in your country? Is it your job? Is it your university's job? Is it the ministry's job? I think it's the job of the society. The Lithuanian Society of Emergency Medicine, its job is to, among other things, its job is to build the emergency medicine system in Lithuania. And even though you're going to go to a different university, a different hospital, maybe the people you did residency with, you might not see them again for another couple years. You'll go across the country. You always have to be part of your own society and contribute back to the society, because a lot of people care about emergency medicine. Some people don't care about emergency medicine. But of the people who do care, the people who care the most are the Lithuanian Society of Emergency Medicine members. And you have to care enough about the specialty to cultivate it and grow and take care of it, because it doesn't happen all by itself. Just because emergency medicine is science doesn't mean you can take those seeds and throw them on the grass and then just let them grow. They have to be grown like a farmer. You have to water them and feed them and weed them and take care of them all the way through the stage. And you sometimes have to drag the development kicking and screaming into existence, and you have people blocking you, and society's blocking you, and other specialists blocking you. And so you have to take care of that development. So however you do that, whether the best way to do that is stay home for the first year or two, if the best way is to some of you split up the first year or two, that's up to you and to decide. But the bottom line is nobody cares about the specialty as much as the society. And it's the society's main job to pull the specialty into existence and all of the system into existence. So however you do that, that's up to you.
Okay, thank you. And the last short question, what can you wish for those 5 new doctors?
See, I'm jealous of people like this in your situation where they're the new doctors. I was not the first doctor in emergency medicine. By the time I did my residency training, I graduated in 2001. That was 20, 30 years of emergency medicine development in the U.S. already. The system was already built, not 100%, but there was a training program already. There was a certification board exam already. There was a job waiting for me already. That's not true for the young doctors who are graduating now. They actually have, in some ways, a harder time ahead of them, but in other ways, a much more challenging and rewarding time ahead of you. So, you know, some of you are going to be the Tintinallis of Lithuania. You'll be the Rosens of Lithuania. You'll be the researchers who really designed emergency for your country. You'll be the educators and innovators. And maybe it doesn't seem like that now, but it happens very quickly. 3, 4, 5 years from now, more will happen in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years than happened in the past 10 years. Development tends to move along slowly, and you do a lot of work and a lot of time, and not much really happens. And then all of a sudden it changes very, very quickly, and you get to a new place. And this is where Lithuania is right now. And so you're going to have 2 or 3 landmarks in the last 10 years, and now you're going to have 10 or 15 or 20 landmarks happen in the next 5 years. So it happens very fast. And we see this country after country after country. And that's a really exciting period to be in. You go from being frustrated that nothing's happening to being frustrated that too much is happening. But that's good. That's what you want. So you be careful what you ask for, because you might get it.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So, hello. Firstly, I want to ask you to present yourself.
Sure. I'm Dr. D.O'Brien. I'm a professor of emergency medicine at the University of Louisville School of Medicine in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay, thank you. So, what brought you here? What did you know about Lithuania before?
Well, I've run into Dinas at a couple conferences in Poland. And I know that he was obviously very involved in creating emergency medicine residency here. I'd heard many good things about the program. I was in Lublin last fall, and he and Terry were looking at the curriculum, and they invited me to come and speak.
Thank you for being here. So you have visited our department already, yes?
Not yet. I'm hoping that I'll be able to catch a tour today. Oh. But I was able to catch EMS about 3 days ago.
What do you think about our EMS system?
Well, it's impressive. When you go into a dispatch center that's dispatching 136 runs a year, and it sounds quiet inside, that tells you a lot about how well it's run. You know, it wasn't chaotic at all. I understand they were talking someone through pediatric resuscitation while I was in there, and it was very calm, very professional. It was excellent.
Then let's proceed to education. There are new residents coming every year, and they are thinking if they should choose emergency medicine, as there are not many tradition and there are not yet emergency medicine physicians. Where can they look up what is happening, and they are wondering, should they choose emergency medicine, mm-hmm. or should they proceed to some other specialty? So can you tell us some words? What is it, and why should a junior doctor choose emergency medicine?
Well, that's a tough question. I suspect that if you're doing your rotations and you find the ICU some of the most interesting areas, if you find the emergency department the more interesting area, if you like the undifferentiated patient and you become the detective, the sleuth, to try to figure out what's going on with a patient. If you get bored doing the same thing every day, if you don't want to abandon aspects of your training when you specialize for an organ system or patient population, if all of that is happening, then you might be, an ER doctor. If you're interested in EMS, if you're interested in what goes on outside the hospital, then you're definitely, an emergency physician. But it's a tough field, though. You have to be able to juggle a lot of balls. You have to be able to figure out how to not drop too many of them. Every time you drop one, it's another specialty that picks the ball up and reminds you that you just dropped a ball. So I thought that Terry's description of a fishbowl was a very good description. But it is very satisfying for a lot of reasons.
Okay, thank you. The interesting thing I heard about you, that you are a member of the World End Committee. Is that true?
Yeah, we do have one of those.
What is it?
Yeah, you have good sources.
What is the World End?
The World Coming to an End Committee. It is a multidisciplinary committee in Louisville where we take a look at all possible threats. And that could be earthquake. We're in a major but currently quiet earthquake zone. We have a large event that occurs every spring, the Kentucky Derby, where millions of people come into town. We often have very large gatherings along what we call our Great Lawn, which occasionally will hold 1 million people who come down to this Great Lawn to watch events that are on the river. And there are all these potential threats and events that could strike the city. So there are representatives from police, fire, health department, hospitals, the state, and all these agencies that periodically get together and review a threat assessment for the community.
So mass casualties.
Yeah, and it could be from anything. It could be mass casualties from, we are in an industrial area. Thousands of tons of cyanide are transported through popular areas every week. And it wouldn't take much to turn that into a pretty big disaster. One motivated person could really make a scene.
Okay, another question about the burnout.
Yeah.
How do you avoid the burnout? Because I think for the junior doctors, some of people say how you would work when you will be 50. You won't be able to do the same thing as you are now, and don't choose it because you will regret in 20 years. You know?
Yeah, this is a big deal. The bad side is it's a very big deal. Emergency physicians, if you don't watch it, you can get burned out. The good news is it's not a permanent condition. So it's not irreversible. I would say the biggest thing that happens is you start losing balance in your life, and that can happen in two ways. You get out of a residency, you're young, you're healthy, maybe a little foolish, you're working a lot, maybe too much, but that's what you want to do, and you ascribe a lifestyle that's associated with that degree of effort. And then you have kids, or your families expand, or you have other obligations and responsibilities, and you find that it's really very hard to back off. We have a term for that, golden handcuffs, where you find yourself having to work that much, not because you enjoy it or you have a passion for it, but because you have obligations. That can be a bad thing. But I think the kicker is when you have that sense of loss of control. I would say if you were to ask most doctors in emergency medicine who are burned out, I would say that probably their number one would be that sense of loss of control, that they're having a hard time controlling their environment, or they can't control their environment, or there are extrinsic pressures that they can't moderate. And a lot of them, frankly, are administration. The truth is, the patients is in many ways the most satisfying part of the job, often is taking care of complex patients, and the satisfaction or the frustration or the sadness or elation associated with that aren't the things that burn you out. What burns you out are the administrative stuff, overwhelmingly, I'd say.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, as we have our first emergency medicine doctors coming up this year. Yesterday they had a celebration for the board exams. Can you wish something for them?
I am so excited for them. I was not of the first wave of emergency medicine residents in the United States, but I knew the first wave. And if they're anything like ours, they were just so remarkable. People who were willing to be early adopters, people who saw the future, people who saw the opportunity to create something. And so it's a combination of fate factors. I think the people who step into the unknown like that are generally pretty interesting people. Those are folks you want to get to know. But not only is that exciting, but the whole world is in front of them. I mean, they're creating their specialty as they go. So you have a neat set of people who are going to have a neat set of challenges. And it's going to be a really exciting life for them.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.